Hi, I'm here with Alysha Kaye, and I'm really excited to talk about The Waiting Room, her new debut book. Alysha, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a middle school English teacher here in Austin, Texas.
I love middle school English teachers. My wife's one.
I heard that. That makes me like you even more, because you know the pain that we go through. But yeah, that's how I pay the bills, struggling to get preteens to enjoy writing as much as I do. And at night, I'm a ferocious blogger and writer. So I'm very excited that my first novel is finally out. I just moved back to Texas actually from Hawaii, where I got my master's in education. But before that, I have a degree in creative writing, which everyone thought I was crazy. What are you going to do with a degree in creative writing? But it's finally paid off. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, I saw that you had struggled through a number of years in Hawaii. That was rough duty.
You know, it's not the paradise that everyone thinks it is. It has its problems, but yes, it was amazing.
That's great. And two very different climes, Austin and Hawaii.
Yes, like night and day. Yeah.
Well, like I was saying on the post, this is just a little way for me to cheat and be like we're having a book club and the author came one day. So just to let everybody know who's going to listen to this, there will be spoilers in both the questions and probably the answers. So please don't listen to this until you've actually read the book. It's fun to be kept guessing, and Alysha does keep you guessing. So there are a lot of interesting things that happen with this couple and the room and Ruth and everybody involved in it. So one of the things that happened is the waiting room itself undergoes a number of changes. The tenor of the room, the feel of the people, the hope, in large part due to Nina and Jude. Is that how you would say Nina's name? Yeah.
Yes.
And, you know, their love and their positive outlook and their influence on others. So, I don't know, was that a metaphor? Was that a just a look on how love influences people? Was that just part of the story arc? How did that all come about?
I really like how you said that just now, love influencing people. I'm definitely a big believer in that. But I also really like the idea of Jude and Nina being such a normal couple. You know, that's said numerous times in the novel, and I think they prove that. You know, they're not perfect. They definitely fight. But through that, I think it proves that you don't have to be some perfect, you know, made up, heavenly couple to have such a strong love and such a strong bond and to have such an impact on strangers, really, because they did. Because I think that's really a common misconception today is people think that if their relationship isn't picture perfect like they've seen in the movies, then it's wrong. So I kind of like that about Nina and Jude.
It almost comes across with the waiting and with the desire to be together again. They're almost like fighting for love the whole way, even with the problems.
Right, right. And that's what's important, you know. If you're willing to fight for it, there's something there.
And typically, when they're not fighting, when they are fighting each other, it's because one of them isn't fighting for the best for each other. It seems like, you know, if you think about where it's not Nina at the time, I can't remember the name now, unfortunately, but you know that they separate for a while, and she goes off to bake. It's because he was just kind of given up in writing, and it took that challenge to make him fight for love again.
Yeah. Leah and Luke. It's hard to keep track of all their multiple lives. It's even hard for me.
Well, and you know, you started off at a certain pace, but at the end, you're cranking through those vignettes very quickly. But it was a really great way to not, I thought, to not have it sort of bogged down into just the same old story. It changed it up. I thought it was a great motif to keep bringing in these new people, and obviously fit the scenario.
Thank you.
Ruth indicates that the love that Nina and Judah, as you just indicated, it's not extraordinary in some ways. They're not extraordinary people. Their marriage isn't somehow some deep super marriage. They are ordinary people that fight for love. But they aren't just ordinary like anybody else. They influence both the waiting room and the people around them in ways other people don't. How is it that they are both ordinary and yet do these extraordinary things?
Honestly, I think it's because they spend so much time in the waiting room, whereas no one else spends more than an hour or two at the most. So I think, especially Jude, spending that first 52 years there, they definitely get a different perspective, and they meet so many people, they hear so many stories, they talk to all the receptionists, and over time, I think they finally realize we can't just continue to wait here for each other and just wait. Like, we must be here to do something greater than waiting.
Right.
Which they do.
Yeah. If you look at Ruth, she finally does get released to die, and it's a relief in a sense for her to be able to do that and to move on to her next life. Just out of curiosity, you never know where characters are going to go, but can she find love, or was she too sort of tied up in herself to be able to do that, do you think?
I would hope so. I think so. I think she finds happiness and love, and I think she definitely proves that, you can't really have that with her whole immortality-esque situation, watching people die over and over. It's kind of strange to talk about these things because for the longest time I really thought of my novel as realistic fiction. And it wasn't until my editor corrected me. She's like, you have reincarnation happening, you have an afterlife, you have this immortal-esque receptionist. It's not really realistic. So it's funny now that I am talking about Ruth, for example. Now I'm finally realizing, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, the setting wasn't realistic, but the things they deal with are the things we all deal with.
Exactly.
So in that sense, it's realistic. So you just talked about this influence, and the fact that they were in the waiting room for such a long time made them a little bit different. So it's a little bit of a question. How does being in the waiting room, they forget when they're in the next life, how does that influence their next life? Is it subconscious? It seems to influence others because it becomes more positive. How does that work out?
Well, obviously they don't remember it, but I definitely think there is a subconscious effect that it takes on their soul, really. And, I would hope that if there is some sort of afterlife, that were a possibility. I want to be an optimist and think that if we do get to live again in some way, we do get to improve as people. I'm not going to knock it out as a possibility, but this book was definitely based on a dream, not a belief of mine.
Right.
But I think it would be amazing if that were a possibility. I think that would be so great for humankind to be able to improve life to life.
Gotcha. Now I'm going to indulge myself just a little bit and just read back a few of the things I just loved, some of the phrases I loved. And the first one came very quickly. Leah was born with a gift of descriptions, and I was born to hear them. I mean, I just love that. I mean, that's such a great symbiotic thing. It goes with, obviously him being blind, but that was just a great line. I love that line.
Thank you. I wasn't too sure about Nina's character being reborn as almost, I guess you could say, professions that were so close to each other. Well, not really professions, but she always kind of had a love for reading and writing. And I didn't know if that was too overdone, but I guess if you have a love for something strong enough, like she did, maybe it would cross over into your next life.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, again, and I mentioned this in the blog, it's a little hard to. So, what makes you you? And obviously, mentioned some things there about what's essential to us. But I think there are, it wasn't quite personality because you would have some very different personalities in these folks. So, that wasn't, at least according to the waiting room, one of the essential characters. But I think there are. Not necessarily, maybe the mistake was saying moral characteristics. I think there's also values that aren't necessarily moral that may carry over, like valuing literature, valuing education, valuing people over projects and things. And some of those tie into moral, some not as much. So maybe that phrase wasn't the best, but it does seem like that carries on. There's certainly a thread in Nina's character, maybe a little bit stronger because she's a little bit stronger in her personality than Jude, that come out in each of her characters a little bit more. I mean, the Thanksgiving dinner, that's Nina all over it. It was that was great.
Thanks.
Here's a line. It's not necessarily the literary aspect of this line, but I think it's there are two times when you talk about the waiting room and sort of aspects about it that come up. One is when you say, it's like this place was built for corrections. So there's this whole notion of second chances, and it's built in Christianity, it's built in lots of beliefs, and it's obviously built in the book in a sense that the waiting room influences you, and you end up with another chance to do your better life even if you don't remember the last. But I thought that was a great line for if we think about that place. And then another line you say, it's not a place to be selfish. So here you're in a place where, you're not trying to gain anything. It's a brief period for most, not some, but for most. And so all that acquisition, all that trying to get up one peg above the next person, all that comparison, almost all goes away. And it's just not a place to be selfish. It's a place to encourage one another and move on. And I thought both of those really captured that well. So those were favorites. I already mentioned his jet black hair sang tenor against his pale skin. I love it. Not sure, again, what it means, but it's just such a great picture. I mean, it's, possibly it's like the pale skin, sort of the backdrop singers to the tenor, but it was a great line.
I'm loving that you're choosing lines that aren't necessarily connected to their romance.
Right.
That just makes me incredibly happy as a writer because a lot of people are focusing solely on the romantic aspect of the novel, which is great. I mean,
yes.
That's amazing, but just thank you for not solely focusing on that.
Maybe I did because it was such a clear element that these were things that stuck out more because they were a little subtler. I mean, it is, my heart's ripped when the guy's waiting and watching his wife cry, and that whole first section was a little rough. It's just because, of course, I can envision that for myself. I have a wife and 4 children, all of whom are teenagers, and to sort of be up in some glass watching them deal with this would be certainly a challenge. Couple more lines. Like a relief and a heartbreak all wrapped up in one. I don't know what to think, kind of like the day you tumbled in here. And I just love that, idea of tumbling into each other's lives, that that emotional connection can happen fairly quickly. And it's a combination of things. It's not just, love. It's both relief, heartbreak. It's many things. And so I thought that was a great line.
Yeah, I don't think you can have love without a little heartache in there.
No. Now, you kind of teased about your poetry, but there's some of them I just loved. Especially, at the end, I want you like belief of which I have none. I want you like love of which I have little. I want you like things that are too expensive, places too far away, and dreams that are too unrealistic. I far-fetch want you. I dream big want you. I high hopes want you. I buttered toast want you. I love that. I
Thank
just
you.
love that. That's great. Um, I hope hearing it read back makes you love it just a little bit more too.
I don't think anyone's ever read my poetry out loud to me. So that was an interesting experience right there.
Well, I'm going to do it one more time. She loved him in handfuls like dirt offerings from a toddler. She kissed him in scoops like like his favorite vanilla Swiss almond. She loved him in buckets like sand to build their dream home, concrete to build the real one. She kissed him in gallops and leaps like running in the airport. She loved him in spoonfuls and mouthfuls and fistfuls. She loved him in every way, in every room, in every season of every year. But most of all, she loved him without fear. And on that, I'm done of reading some of my favorite places, but I really loved it. It was a pleasure to get to know you a little bit through your book. Obviously, authors aren't their books, and they're different than the people that they write, but I think you came out a little bit in this. Plus, and just seeing you respond to what's going on during the blog, and obviously loved reading the book. And so wish you well in your next book, and continuing to work this one so that folks will read it. And anybody watching this, please read the book. It's great. I highly recommend it. It's not only a thought exercise, but it's just a great story.
Thank you
So,
so much, Joe. This has been a pleasure.
well, it's been a pleasure for me. It's great to speak with you, and I wish you well as you continue your blog tour.
Thank you, and thank you, readers.